gonna show you some of the worst beginner reverse layup mistakes, man, and some instant fixes. One of the first ones is not using the correct hand on the correct side of the hoop. Now, as you get advanced, using the right hand on the left side of the hoop is something you could work on because maybe there's a defender here. But when you're getting started and you're a beginner and you're trying to get your reverse layups down, this is going to be a lot tougher than this. You can see just from where my arms are and how the ball's positioned, how much easier this angle is. It might be more challenging on the ball control because you're not comfortable with your left hand, but hear me out on this. You need to work on that left hand because you're gonna find it to be so much easier than a regular layup. For me, I'm a lefty. My right hand overhand layups just never still, even after millions of repetitions, don't feel 100% comfortable. Underhand, those feel pretty good, but I'll tell you what, the reverse layups, those feel to me great. I'm super confident in them. I can manipulate the ball in all kinds of ways. They just feel good. So work on that left hand on the left side and make sure you're also using that right hand on the right side. This next mistake I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, so we can get to some of the more mistakes that are maybe making you miss reverse layups, but it's to make sure you're working on both sides. That right hand side is great. So if you're a righty, now you can feel confident driving to the left side and know you can still get back to that right hand that you're comfortable with. So that way you're more of a threat back on the perimeter to attack to the left side, and now it makes it easier for you to drive right when you want to drive right. But then number two, when you are driving right, you won't be so predictable with this layup, so you can come under and get to the other side for the reverse. Which brings us to the next mistake, which is how you should start learning them to begin with, but also something you should work on. So to start, you want to work on more of an angle here. Starting from the elbow would be a great place. Eventually you want to get to the baseline and work that angle. We'll talk more details about mistakes for that, but this is a good place to start, going left hand to the left side from the right elbow, and now you'll have to use kind of a sidearm release. Now, some of the mistakes that are going to happen with this is, number one, maybe the footwork gets messed up. So as you're learning these, I would recommend going left right if you're going to end up taking a left hand layup. If I go right left, it's just going to feel a little bit more goofy, a little bit more awkward. So start out maybe slowing down if you have to make sure you're picking up on that left step and then getting into that right step. And then again, as you get advanced, you can work on the goofy footed or the wrong footwork, and also things such as jumping off 2 feet, things like that. But when you're a beginner getting started, go with the basic footwork, just like your normal layup. Trust me, it'll make that release of the basketball feel a lot more comfortable and easy. You don't have to twist and contort your body. Because if I got this leg up, now I have to really like turn like that to get the shot that way. Versus here, it's just more natural to turn like that. So it's almost exactly like your left hand layup. It's just that the hand position is going to change slightly. You also want to make sure that hand is on the side. That's one of the mistakes, is having your hand here. It's going to be really hard to manipulate the ball that way with your hand behind the ball like that. You could get away with having your hand under the ball like this, because then you can rotate it out to the side and get it to push it that way. But you want to make sure you get it on the side, because you're going to need to compensate a little. Since your body's moving slightly this way, you have to push the basketball back further that way. So the hand position and then the release, pushing the ball like that, helps get it that way. So a quick hack for you is, normally if there's a square on the backboard, the corner would be like right about there. Instead of aiming there, aim a little bit more inside of that to compensate for your movement this way, and counteract it aiming further this way. Now you have a better chance of making that shot with your momentum going. Another one of the biggest reverse layup mistakes would be this. See what I did there? See how hard that layup was? Leave a comment, let me know if you think you know why. And here's another example of doing that wrong thing, but a little bit more the other way. And what it is where you're picking up the basketball and where you're jumping from, which they tie in very closely with each other. That's why I really like to start players with these elbow layups for the reverse layup, just so they can get the timing and positioning right. So from here, you would take one dribble, left, right, and that'll put you right about where you need to be. So you can start to build in that motor pattern into your body, an awareness of where you are in the court, and after a while to become habit to pick up the basketball right around there. So you'll notice I'm almost right dead center in the middle of the paint for these diagonal layups. Now, if you have shorter legs, longer legs, if you're faster, more or less athletic, that could, you know, change that. If you're more athletic, you might need to start out a step further, so you're picking up way more out here, and then you can get out there. But what we want to avoid is the mistake of picking up from too far away. And now, if I'm picking up way back here, I got to really try to hang in the air a long time to get that layup off. As you get advanced, sure, that's something you can work on. But we also don't want to pick it up too late, because now when I'm taking the layup, it's a really weird angle. But if you want to know 3 of the biggest mistakes that keep players from scoring around the rim, check out the free video I got pinned to the comments for you. Next mistake is not working different angles like this. That baseline angle is a most extreme reverse layup you're gonna take. But as you can tell, that's a very different shot going like this versus the one coming from the elbow. And now working on these is a big mistake because number one, this just isn't probably gonna be an option for you in games. And number two, if you do try it in a game, less chance you're gonna make it because again, it's such a different shot. So you might wanna start with these maybe not directly from the baseline and come a little more diagonal, maybe from like foul line extended, and then work your way here so it's a little bit less of a transition. You'll notice it's kind of that sidearm layup like we did from the elbow, but it also adds a little of this side spin, which you're gonna have to use a lot of when you get to the baseline, which is one of the biggest mistakes, is not adding that side spin. So when I'm coming kind of a 45-degree angle here, there's gonna be sort of that sidearm motion and that wrist rotation for a little bit of side spin. It's in between that baseline layup and the one from the elbow. But when we're talking about the full-on baseline one, you wanna think about having your hand more under the ball and then rotating so it comes off the pinky last, like this. It's almost like turning a doorknob. And what that spin's gonna do is help you get the ball to go back that way. Because again, our body's going this way, so that spin's gonna help bring the ball back that way. Another thing for both this 45-degree angle and the more baseline angle, you have to think about bringing your arm back a little more than normal, swinging it this way with either a little elbow bend or shoulder movement or a little bit of both, to bring the ball back that way, as well as that little wrist flick, not just the turn, but also actually flicking and pushing it that way with the wrist. If you don't get that arm involvement and spin, that's what's gonna happen. Ball's literally gonna come straight up, straight down, maybe even keep going that way. It's gonna be a really bad miss. So the spin is important, the wrist motion back this way, the elbow a little bit, and the shoulder, all that's gonna help you make those shots more. One other mistake with baseline layups is if you're practicing them, so normally you're going to go right, left to bring that right arm up, right? But you'll notice what I was doing with my dribble there. In most game situations, the defense is gonna be here on you, so you're not gonna be able to dribble with this hand. So when you're practicing them, you wanna think about using the left hand, coming down to the baseline, and then right around the paint here is a good spot to aim for, this lane marker line. Longer legs, you might be able to go further if you're more athletic a little further, but that's a good starting point, especially for beginners. Picking up with the right step on that marker, then taking the left step to jump. And if you're moving more with full speed, you can see how I'm gonna be across the backboard here, right leg up, right arm up. So I'm transitioning from a left-hand dribble into a right-hand layup. And when you're starting from the right side of the hoop, you're gonna be dribbling with the right hand, picking up with the left foot on that lane line marker, second step with the right step, jumping and making the layup. Next mistake is how you're hitting the backboard. Especially when we get into these more baseline layups, you're gonna have to get some more of that spin on. Notice I'm using the goofy footwork there. Again, that's advanced. So on top of aiming further that way than we think we need to, you don't need to do that as much when you're doing the side spin because of that side spin catching the backboard and pulling it this way. But in general, you're gonna wanna aim a little bit that way more than you think you need to, even on the side spin ones. It's just gonna help you get the ball back that way. But on top of that, you wanna think about hitting the backboard a little bit higher, especially on these side spin ones, because that gives the ball more airtime. If it's up higher and hits the backboard, it's gonna come further this way, versus if you hit it low, it's gonna not have as much room to get all the way over there. If I hit the backboard wide but real low, and I don't get like tons of side spin on, I'm probably not gonna get that bounce. So there I added a little extra side spin. But if I get it up higher, notice how it gets more time to travel across the backboard. On top of that, I wanna think about the ball hitting the backboard at the peak of the ball's arc or slightly on the way down, and you'll probably get a little bit softer bounce, better touch. And again, if you're using that side spin, that's really gonna help give you a nice bounce. A lot of times it'll hit the rim and rattle in. One thing that'll really help you with that side spin and trying to hit the backboard at the peak of its arc is just come right under the rim. So I'm looking straight up through the middle of the rim and just extending the arm wide and working on using that spin to get the ball to come in. And I can play around trying to hit the backboard a little bit higher. I can try to hit a little lower, tighter, right? Just play around with different spots and hitting the backboard in different spots to really master this. But also I would work on having your chest facing this way and working on that, and then coming this way. So you're working on different angles, which comes to the next mistake. When you're getting started and in general, it's gonna be best to try to keep your chest facing the baseline, because now you can extend out like this. And it's just like that drill I just showed you, right? You can get that kind of a side spin. It's gonna be closer to what you've worked on. And on top of that, you're opening up options. If you think you're gonna reverse and all of a sudden defender jumps here on you, you can come back to this side and almost do like a reverse on the side you already were from. So it's like a fake reverse, but it's just gonna be a little easier with your chest facing the baseline to get those shots to go in and get a softer bounce. But at the same token, a mistake is to not work on just keeping your chest facing the direction you're going, because that layup's gonna be better when you just need to get past the defense fast here and get to this spot quickly. But you have to learn to compensate for that shot a little more by pulling your arm back more and getting a little more spin on. Another big mistake is trying to add too much extra sauce and ball movement into your layups. Now that's something you should definitely work on as you get advanced, but when you're a beginner, it's gonna make things a lot harder. So try to eliminate going one hand and then switching to the other, or even two hands and dipping under. But one thing that will really help you with especially the baseline layups is having a little cradle motion. Think about like rocking a baby. They say call it the rock the cradle sometimes. So you're gonna kind of bring the ball maybe slightly to this side or just right to your midline, and think about having it come up with that side spin. And on your more diagonal layups that you just do from the elbow, think about just having the ball on the left side and just extending out to the side and then pushing it across. But basically just two hands to one for almost all of them. That's probably gonna be the best way to start off to get them comfortable. Because if you go from here and then try to get here, this is a big opportunity for you to bobble the ball and not get good control before you get up into the layup. Or even just here, there's a lot more body control required to jump and then come in the air and then come all the way under. Just keeping this motion a little tighter is gonna give you better control, but also make it feel comfortable. Three of the biggest mistakes that keeps players from scoring as much as they could around the rim is in a free video that's pinned to the comments. If you found the video helpful, like, subscribe, turn on all notifications, and I'll see you in that video next.